My kid ditched me at the airport like I was some old suitcase he didn't need anymore. By the time he swaggered into his bank, I'd already locked down every account he thought he owned. His card got rejected. His house payment tanked. And me, the mom he treated like a personal cash machine? I was busy showing other women how to disappear. He left me high and dry. I left him broke. Stick with me, this story's about to get wild. Have you ever been left waiting by someone you trusted? Let me know in the comments as we dive deeper. When the plane touched down and the seatbelt lights flicked off, my heart was practically soaring, ready to spot my son waving, grinning, maybe even holding a goofy sign. But when I stepped into that crowded terminal, all I got was a sea of strangers and the glare of those harsh, buzzing lights.
No quorum hug, no hey, mom.
Just the bite of icy air sneaking through the sliding doors. Deep down, something in me, something soft and trusting, just broke. He wasn't showing up. I clutched my little carry-on tighter, my old wedding ring catching the light for a second. I lingered by the pickup zone, shifting my weight, telling myself maybe he was stuck in traffic. Maybe wires got crossed. My heart thudded, each passing car a reminder. He's not coming. Was I foolish to hope? I dug out my phone, my finger hovering over Jake's name. No text, no missed calls. I dialed him anyway. It rang 5 times before his voicemail kicked in, his voice sounding distant, almost like a kid I didn't know anymore. Yo, it's Jake. Drop a message. I didn't bother. I slipped the phone back in my pocket, took a deep breath and caught a whiff of jet fuel and stale coffee. For a few shaky minutes I stood there, snowflakes swirling lazily around me, hoping for something. But airports don't care about your hopes. They chew them up and spit them out. It hit me like a slap. I wasn't delayed. I was forgotten. I climbed into a cab, my bag thudding against the seat. The driver barely looked at me. Where we headed, lady? He grumbled, voice worn from a long shift. Home, I murmured, giving him the address I've had for 28 years. The one Jake could recite by heart when he was 6. The one he didn't bother driving to today. The cab weaved into traffic, headlights cutting through the snowy night. I stared out the window, hands folded in my lap, fingers tense. The city zipped by, twinkling holiday displays, couples tucked under scarves, stores pushing last-minute deals before the holidays. It all felt so far away, like I was watching someone else's life. My phone pinged. Not Jake. Just a dumb ad. Wish you were here. Book your next getaway. I let out a sharp, bitter chuckle. Then I opened my banking app instead. My thumb paused over the screen. Jake's goofy grin still set as my emergency contact. Emergency. What a joke. An emergency is something you race to fix, something you show up for. Not something you leave stranded at baggage claim. I pulled up the account settings. Joint access, Jake Thompson. Backup debit card. Link to Jake Thompson. Beneficiary, Jake Thompson. It wasn't his money. It was my trust he took for granted. A strange peace washed over me, like slipping into a warm bath after years of shivering. I scrolled to the account controls. Lock access. One little button. No fuss, no fireworks, just silence. The cab hit a bump, jostling me. Outside, the city was icing over, streets emptying, wind whistling softly between the buildings. I didn't waver. I tapped the screen. Initiate lock on account. Confirm? Yes. The app blinked, then flashed. Request submitted. Access restriction pending, bank review within 48 hours. I tucked my phone away, leaned back against the worn leather seat, and let the cold glass of the window press against my hair. For the first time in forever, I wasn't waiting for Jake. And for the first time in forever, he was about to learn what it's like to be left in the dust. Traffic crawled as we neared my neighborhood. The driver mumbled about construction up ahead, but I barely registered it. My mind was already racing to the next move. Freezing one account. That was just the warm-up. Some revolutions come with megaphones and marches. Mine started in the back of a cab, with me staring into the snowy dark, quietly done with being betrayed. I didn't plan this. I didn't jot down grudges or rehearse big speeches. I just decided right then that loyalty deserves more than being tossed aside. And that changed everything. The cab's heater wheezed, barely warming the air as we inched through the frosty streets. I pressed my forehead against the window, my breath fogging the glass. Headlights outside blurred into soft streaks, and holiday lights flickered like they were giving up. I wasn't thinking about the airport anymore. I was thinking about 28 years of giving everything. After my husband passed, too soon, too sudden, I wrapped my whole world around Jake. Every school meeting, every bruised knee, every heartbreak, I was there, the safety net he never had to question. When Jake was 24, bursting with his big plan for some tech startup nobody got, I didn't blink. I dipped into my savings, ignoring the bank lady's raised eyebrows. He's got vision, I told her. Vision needs a boost. I never told Jake what it took. Skipping new furniture, stretching groceries, sticking it out at a job I loathed for 6 extra years. When his startup crashed, when the investors bailed, when he came home defeated, I just held him close and whispered, "We'll figure it out." The cab rolled onto my street, where the old row houses sagged under fresh snow, like they were too tired to stand tall. My porch light glowed faintly, waiting for me. The driver coughed. "This is you, ma'am." I handed him the cash, my voice steady. "Keep the extra." I stepped into the chilly night, my breath curling like fog, and dragged my little suitcase up the worn steps to my front door. Home, or at least the bones of it. Inside, the air carried a faint whiff of vanilla and aging books. Photos lined the fireplace mantel. Jake's toothy smile at 7, his college graduation, his big wedding day. Dusty shelves held his old trophies, soccer medals, science fair ribbons, certificates I'd framed with a proud mom's heart. But now? Those frames, those quiet sacrifices behind every snapshot, they didn't mean a thing. I left my bag by the door and headed to my office, a fire in my steps I hadn't felt in ages. My laptop flickered on, casting a soft glow across the room. I pulled up my bank's website, the screen flashing with accounts and numbers Jake always assumed would be there to bail him out. I clicked on emergency access. There was Jake's name, tied to every major account like a knot I'd let him tighten. A safety net he didn't deserve but always leaned on. I paused for a split second, my heart catching. Then, with hands steady as steel, I hit remove authorized user. A pop-up appeared. "Are you sure? This cannot be undone." I clicked yes without a blink. The page reloaded and Jake's name was gone, like a feather swept away in a quiet breeze. But I wasn't done, not by a long shot. Can you feel that moment when you start taking back what's yours? My mind was racing now, clear and sharp. I opened a new tab, pulling up a law firm's website I'd bookmarked months ago, just in case. With careful, deliberate clicks, I filled out their form, set up a new trust.
Sole beneficiary, Ellen Harper.
No co-trustees unless I say so. When I closed the tab, my hands weren't shaking. They were rock solid, sure, free. My phone pinged on the desk. A short text from the firm. "Trust confirmed, registered only to you." I sank back in my chair, the old leather sighing under me, and stared at the dark window. Somewhere out there, Jake was still fooling himself, thinking he could yank my loyalty like a leash whenever he wanted. But tonight I'd slipped free. Tonight I started the quiet climb back to me, and when Jake reached for me next, he'd find nothing but a cold, empty space. Some cages don't have bars, they're built from guilt, duty, old promises you didn't know you were keeping. I hadn't seen how many strings Jake had woven around my life until I started snipping them, one by one. And I didn't owe anyone an apology for it. Morning sunlight slipped through the faded curtains, and I woke up stiff but with a mind so clear it almost startled me. The house felt quiet but not heavy, more like a space I could finally claim. No guilt squeezing my chest. Today wasn't for running errands, wiring money for emergencies, or jumping at Jake's sweet-talking favors. Today was mine, and I was ready to finish what I started in that cab. At my kitchen table, I fired up my laptop again, the screen's glow as familiar as an old friend. I logged into my credit accounts with the ease of someone who'd been quietly managing them for years, paying Jake's bills he barely acknowledged, covering temporary gaps he swore he'd repay. My eyes locked on a secondary card. Cardholder, Jake Thompson. Monthly charges: $1,500 to $4,000. Auto-paid always without a peep. My jaw tightened. No second thoughts this time. I clicked terminate card and watched the system wipe it out in seconds. Another string cut. Done. Barely an hour later, my phone buzzed. "Jake. Mom, your account's messed up again. Cards declined. Can you fix it?" I ignored it, but a nagging thought lingered. His business deals always seemed too slick, too secretive. Had he crossed the line I didn't know about? I stared at the text.
No hey, Mom.
No, how's it going? Just the same old assumption that my life should spin around his problems. For a moment, my thumb lingered over the reply button. Old habits tug, say you'll help, smooth it over, don't make waves. Then I remembered sitting in a hospital room 6 years ago, recovering from surgery, waiting for Jake to show up. I waited 4 days. He never came. Work stuff, he'd laughed later like it was nothing. I set the phone down, no reply. No anger, no tears. Just the calm choice to let silence say what words didn't need to. I slid open my desk drawer and pulled out a folder of papers. My will, medical directives, emergency contacts. All the things I'd carefully filled out over the years with Jake's name neatly listed. Another invisible tether. Another lie I'd bought into. That afternoon I sat at my sturdy pine desk, winter sunlight spilling across it in warm golden pools. With steady hands I rewrote everything. Emergency contact gone. Medical proxy. Switched to a dear friend from my book club. Beneficiaries. Now a mix of local charities and causes I cared about. I signed the new forms with a bold, looping signature. It was the first time my name stood alone since I was 24, and it felt like coming home. That night, I slipped into bed earlier than usual, my joints creaking in the cold, but my heart oddly warm. The house was so still it seemed to hum, like it was finally at peace. No late-night worries about unpaid bills, number 2 a.m. texts from Jake. No dread about what crisis he'd drop on me next. For the first time in years I slept hard, not from exhaustion but because I was free. Have you ever felt that moment when you finally let go? Drop a yes in the comments if you've been there. But freedom hits different depending on where you're standing. Somewhere across town, Jake was starting to feel the squeeze. At 11:47 p.m., he tossed up a post online trying to play it cool but with that edge of worry I could spot a mile away. Know any good loan guys? Stuff happens, lol. Those words dangled out there raw and frantic, like a flag waving in a storm. The unseen strings tying Jake to his old life were unraveling fast, and he hadn't even clocked it yet. Bigger blows were still on their way. There's a gut punch that comes when you realize you weren't just overlooked. You were wiped out on purpose like you never mattered. I didn't expect a parade in my honor, but watching that party play out online in crystal clear video hit me with a truth I wasn't ready for. They were toasting to everything I'd poured my heart into building, without so much as a nod to the woman who made it possible. I sat rigid on my faded couch, hands clasped tight, as my laptop's glow lit up the dim living room like a ghost. The live stream snapped into focus, and there it was, Sarah's birthday blowout in some fancy hotel ballroom. Golden balloons floated under sparkling chandeliers. Waiters in sharp black suits weaved through the crowd with trays of bubbly and cupcakes piled high like sculptures. And right in the middle, Jake, arms slung around Sarah's waist, flashing a big, cheesy grin for the camera. I stared, a sharp tug in my chest. Not quite grief, but something colder, clearer. Realization. I'd spent years making Jake's birthdays magic. Can you picture it? Late nights shaping pirate ship cakes when he was 7, scrounging for dollar store tiaras for his night-themed bash at 10, giving up my only free weekend at 40 to throw his surprise 20th when his buddies flaked. No fancy live streams back then, no glitzy gifts, just flour on my hands, singed fingers, and smiles I pieced together through bone-deep tiredness. I rubbed my thumb over a faint scar on my knuckle, a reminder of the time I burned myself rushing to fix a busted candle holder for one of those parties. On the screen, Sarah opened a small velvet box and squealed. Diamond earrings sparkled under the lights, perfect and dazzling as she spun for the camera. The comments flooded in, wow, #couple goals. She's so lucky. You two are perfect. I tilted my head, my eyes narrowing. I knew that box, the sleek logo embossed in gold. It was from a high-end jeweler I'd helped Jake pay for after his third startup tanked. Just a quick loan, Mom. I'll square it up soon. He never did. But there was Sarah, flaunting those earrings, a shiny trophy bought with my sacrifice. The camera swept over the party. Laughing faces, dancing crowds, flashes of a life built on someone else's dime. Not once did Jake check his phone. No quick text, no missed call, no oops, forgot to invite you. I wasn't forgotten. I was erased. I leaned back, closed the laptop with a soft click, and the room fell dark, save for the warm glow of a lamp in the corner. The house hummed, heat kicking on, old floorboards creaking. I didn't cry. I smiled, small and fierce. Not sad. Strategic. I walked to my desk, slow and steady, and opened my laptop again. Not for party videos, but for something lasting. I logged into a private bank account Jake didn't even know existed. The screen blinked with quiet power. Open new international account. I filled out the form with laser focus, name, secure ID, offshore location. My money was slipping out of Jake's reach, safe from any desperate grabs he might try later. The final prompt popped up. Confirm transfer? I clicked yes, and a soft ding signaled it was done. My assets were moving, smooth, silent, untouchable. Just like me. Across town, Sarah's giggles blasted through party speakers. In my living room, my world finally went quiet in the sweetest way. I wasn't just cutting loose, I was starving the fire. And when Jake figured it out, he'd be way too late. The real sting wasn't when Jake's card got rejected. It was the slow dawn that the life he'd banked on was locked away for good. Some losses scream. Others creep up in quiet humiliations. A beep at a checkout, a bank's calm but brutal voice. Jake stood under the grocery store's buzzing lights, dumping an armload of stuff onto the conveyor belt. Sarah had sent him a snippy list that morning. Almond milk, fancy cheeses, those overpriced quinoa crackers she didn't even eat but thought looked chic. Jake didn't check the prices. Why would he? I'd always been there to cover it. Or so he thought. The cashier, a kid with a tired smirk and chipped blue nail polish, rang up the last item. $232.47, she said flatly. Jake swiped his card like it was nothing. The machine buzzed. Declined. He blinked, frowning, and tried again. Declined. People in line started shifting, one guy clearing his throat loudly. Can you, run it one more time? Jake mumbled, his face getting hot. The cashier sighed, punched in the card number by hand. Declined. Maybe call your bank, she said, already looking past him. Jake forced a chuckle, abandoning the cart and its mountain of groceries, and stumbled out into the parking lot. The winter wind hit him like a slap. He fumbled for his phone and dialed the bank, hands shaky. After an eternity on hold, a too-sweet voice picked up. Hello, Mr. Thompson. There's a hold on the linked account, pending primary owner verification.
Jak skutvistet.
Verification? What's that supposed to mean? That's my mom's account. I'm on it.
I'm sorry.
Sir, the voice purred. Your access has been revoked. Secondary users are locked out until the review's complete. Jake gripped the steering wheel, his palms slick. He wanted to shout, to argue, to demand answers. But deep down, a cold truth gnawed at him. He was nothing. Jake was legally and financially a ghost, and he didn't even know it yet. A week later, he got the bank's notice. His access was gone. Furious, he called Sarah, and they started plotting their next move. A lawsuit to reclaim what they thought was theirs. Meanwhile, I was across town in a cozy office filled with law books and plush carpets. My estate lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Ms. Larson, pushed a hefty folder across her polished oak desk. Everything's done, she said, her voice clear and final. All your assets are locked down, every account sealed tight, your future safe from anyone trying to claim it. I nodded, feeling decades of weight slip off me like an old jacket I didn't need anymore. I grabbed the pen, no fuss, and signed the last page with a steady hand. As of now, I was in full control, alone. Somewhere in a grocery store parking lot, Jake's panic was turning into a hot, bubbling anger. He called Sarah. She answered mid-swipe through her phone, her tone already sharp with annoyance. What's your deal now? She snapped. My card got rejected, Jake growled. Twice. Mom shut it all down. Sarah let out a harsh laugh. I warned you not to count on her forever. She's old, Jake. Probably doesn't even know what she's doing. She knows, he shot back, his voice tight. She planned this. The line went quiet, but for the first time, Jake caught the edge in Sarah's voice, cold, cutting disdain. You better take charge, she hissed, before she blows everything. Jake's teeth ground so hard his jaw ached. Control. The word bounced around his head like a stray bullet. Can you imagine that moment when your whole world feels like it's finally yours? In the lawyer's office, I leaned back, the sunlight streaming through tall windows warming my face. For the first time in years, my future wasn't tied to someone else's sinking dreams. I'd slipped free quietly and I was just warming up. At that same moment, Jake was slumped in his car, staring at a zeroed-out balance on his banking app, his pulse pounding. He didn't get it yet, But the mom he thought was his safety net had snipped every last tie, and the drop was going to be colder and lonelier than he could ever picture. Dreams built on someone else's foundation don't just crash. They crumble slow, until one day you're standing in the ruins, wondering who pulled the ground out from under you. Jake hadn't figured that out. He still thought my silence was just a phase, that I was sitting around waiting for him to patch things up. He hadn't learned. I wasn't waiting at all. The first real crack came on a dreary Wednesday morning, tucked inside a plain envelope. Jake ripped it open, half expecting another junk mail offer. Instead, a bank's logo glared back, cold and official. Notice of mortgage payment failure. Account delinquent. Immediate action required. His stomach lurched. Gotta be a mix-up, he mumbled, flipping through the pages with shaky fingers. But deep down, before he even called the bank, he knew. The auto payments I'd always handled without a word? They were gone. The safety net was history. The front door slammed, shaking the hall as Sarah stormed in, her designer bags hitting the floor with a sharp thud. "What is this?" she barked, shoving the letter in Jake's face. He tried to shrug it off. "Just a glitch. Mom'll sort it out, she always does." But the words felt thin, like they were dissolving as he said them. Sarah crossed her arms, her voice a low, venomous hiss. "You better fix this, or we're done looking like idiots in this town." She didn't wait for him to answer, just stomped upstairs, her heels cracking against the steps like thunder. Across town, I sat at my kitchen table, a mug of lavender tea warming my hands. I hadn't opened Jake's frantic texts. I hadn't picked up his calls. Silence was my armor, now my weapon. I'd spent too many years plugging the holes Jake left behind, paying for his messes, funding dreams he never valued. Flashback to me standing outside Jake's college dorm, swallowing tears as I helped him pack after he flunked out his first year. No yelling, no "I told you so," just quiet support. Writing another tuition check while he swore next time'll be better. It never was. Another job gone. Another startup bust. Another emergency. I was supposed to eat without a thank you. Now Jake's world was falling apart, and I wasn't rushing to save him. I cradled my tea, savoring the calm I'd earned sip by sip. Outside, a little bird trilled on the windowsill, unaware of the storm brewing miles away. My laptop pinged with a Facebook alert. Curious, I clicked. Sarah had posted a vague jab. Some people only show up when it suits them. Some parents forget what family means. Sud. Likes piled up, strangers chiming in with pity. I gave a small knowing smile. Let them believe whatever. I didn't owe them my truth, especially not people who'd written me out of their story. Here's where it gets good. Can you feel the shift? I opened a new browser tab, and travel sites lit up the screen. Crystal clear waters, sandy beaches, resorts promising peace I could barely imagine. I scrolled slowly, soaking in every detail, no guilt, no looking back. I picked a 5-star beachfront retreat, famous for its quiet and healing vibes. I booked the works. Private bungalow, daily yoga, evening boat rides, total disconnection from the world. Payment? Straight from my private offshore account. No one's approval needed, no one's permission required. When the confirmation email landed with a soft chime, I leaned back, a deep, glowing satisfaction settling into my core. Not loud, not flashy, just the kind that fills you up and says you did it. You chose you. Meanwhile, at the house Jake thought he'd coast on forever, another envelope slipped through the mail slot, stamped final notice in angry red. But I'd never see it. And this time I wasn't the one stepping in to clean up his mess. Freedom doesn't show up with trumpets, it sneaks in with a plane ticket, a packed bag, and a heart done waiting for sorry. The ferry docked at Sapphire Cove Retreat, its white bungalows glowing against the turquoise sea. A staffer greeted me with a warm smile and a glass of mango juice. "Welcome home," he said, and for the first time I believed it. I smiled back, the sun kissing my face, the weight of years peeling away like a soft, slow sigh. My bungalow sat high above the waves, close enough that the morning tide murmured like a gentle lullaby against the cliffs. I closed my eyes, wondering, could I really start over? Was this peace mine to keep? Inside, it was all calm creams and airy linens, curtains swaying in the sea breeze, cool stone floors, a bed so wide it begged for dreams I hadn't let myself chase in decades. I dropped my bag by the door, slipped off my shoes and stepped barefoot onto the balcony. Below, the water sparkled and shifted with every gust. I took a deep breath. This was mine. Not leased, not loaned, not bled dry for someone else's crisis. That night, I cracked open a fresh leather journal. The first page gleamed, empty and full of promise. I uncapped my pen and with steady, careful strokes wrote, "Today I answer only to me." I underlined it 3 times. The ink was still wet when a knock came at the door. On the porch stood a woman in her late 60s, cropped gray hair, a playful grin, skin tanned like well-worn leather. "Hope I'm not barging in," she said, holding up a bottle of rose like a flag of truce. "Us newbies gotta stick together."
I'm Claire.
I laughed, a real warm laugh I hadn't heard from myself in ages. "Get in here," I said, swinging the door wide. We sipped wine on the balcony, trading soft stories of lost loves, ungrateful kids, and the thrill of starting over when the world thought you were done. By the time the moon was up, Clara had roped me into morning kayak lessons. "And trivia nights," she added, winking. "Nothing screams freedom like outsmarting some retired hotshot for bar credits." The days melted into each other, smooth and golden. Mornings paddling on the water, afternoons melting under spa treatments, evenings laughing by fire pits with other women who'd all weathered their own storms. I blossomed in the salty air, growing lighter, tougher, surer every day that choosing myself wasn't betrayal. It was survival. Back home, Jake's world was shrinking with every unanswered call. He tried once, twice, 8 times, his voicemails piling up like spam, each one sharper, angrier. I saw his name flash on my phone once and slid it to block contact without a second thought. No yelling, no tears, just calm. But some folks don't fade quietly. 2 days later, an email from my lawyer, Ms. Larson, pinged in my inbox. Notice of intended legal action. Sarah's name sat at the bottom, dripping with spite. The message was a sloppy mix of threats and demands, claiming I was unstable, that I'd been tricked into locking accounts, that Jake and Sarah deserved access for my own sake. I shut the email without a flinch, poured another glass of rose, and let the ocean breeze tangle in my hair like a warm hug. They could shout into the wind all they wanted, I was done listening. Tomorrow, Clara was taking me to a hidden cove where the water was so clear you could see your shadow smiling up at you. I was ready to swim out, far as I could, and let the last bits of guilt dissolve in the waves. Words can cut deeper than steel, especially when they're dressed up in legal jargon. Jake and Sarah thought I'd buckle under their pressure. They forgot. Paper cuts sting too, and I'd spent a lifetime learning to bleed quietly and keep going. Now, I wasn't bleeding at all. I was drawing lines they'd never dare step over. The sun blazed over the resort when my phone hummed on the balcony table. Not a call, not another frantic voicemail, an email. Subject: cease and desist confirmation. Filed successfully. I sipped my guava juice, a small smile tugging at my lips at the clean weight of those words. Ms. Larson had been ruthless. The letter sent to Jake and Sarah spelled it out in icy, precise terms. No harassment, no sneaky financial grabs, no spreading lies about guardianship or neglect. Break the rules? Straight to court. I hadn't raised my voice, I'd raised the game. Meanwhile, back in their crumbling world, Jake tore open the letter with trembling hands. Sarah leaned over his shoulder, her face turning a furious shade of crimson. "She can't be serious," Sarah spat. "She's threatening us?" Jake crushed the paper, slamming it onto the kitchen counter. "This is on you," he snarled. "You pushed too far." Sarah's eyes narrowed to slits. She started it, thinking she could ditch us after all we did for her. Neither dared say the truth, humming between them. They hadn't done a damn thing for me. They'd only taken. And now the tab was due. I was already a world away in every sense. That afternoon in the resort's airy marble lobby, I signed the papers for my second condo. A sunny little place in a quiet coastal village abroad. Part investment, part sanctuary. Freedom came with a price and I'd paid it in full. I tucked the documents into my sleek new travel folder, its edges crisp, untouched by grasping hands. Sipping a latte under a swaying palm, a memory drifted up. I didn't even glance back as the plane lifted off the runway. No need to peek at the mess I was leaving behind. Some places you don't just escape, you soar above them. Can you feel that rush of breaking free? The resort came into view like a dream, white bungalows dotting a pristine shoreline. the ocean glittering like a sea of shattered jewels under the sun. I stepped off the boat, the warm wood of the dock creaking under my practical flats. The air smelled of salt and possibility. A young staffer in a breezy linen shirt handed me a frosty glass of mango juice. "Welcome to Sapphire Cove Retreat," he said with a grin. I smiled back, the sun kissing my face, the weight of years peeling away like a soft, slow sigh. My bungalow sat high above the waves, close enough that the morning tide murmured like a gentle lullaby against the cliffs. Inside, it was all calm creams and airy linens, curtains swaying in the sea breeze, cool stone floors, a bed so wide it begged for dreams I hadn't let myself chase in decades. I dropped my bag by the door, slipped off my shoes and stepped barefoot onto the balcony. Below, the water sparkled and shifted with every gust. I took a deep breath. This was mine. Not leased, not loaned, not bled dry for someone else's crisis. That night, I cracked open a fresh leather journal. The first page gleamed, empty and full of promise. I uncapped my pen and with steady, careful strokes wrote, "Today I answer only to me." I underlined it 3 times. The ink was still wet when a knock came at the door. On the porch stood a woman in her late 60s, cropped gray hair, a playful grin, skin tanned like well-worn leather. "Hope I'm not barging in," she said, holding up a bottle of rose like a flag of truce. "Us newbies gotta stick together."
I'm Clara.
I laughed, a real warm laugh I hadn't heard from myself in ages. "Get in here," I said, swinging the door wide. We sipped wine on the balcony, trading soft stories of lost loves, ungrateful kids, and the thrill of starting over when the world thought you were done. By the time the moon was up, Clara had roped me into morning kayak lessons. "And trivia nights," she added, winking. Nothing screams freedom like outsmarting some retired hotshot for bar credits. The days melted into each other, smooth and golden. Mornings paddling on the water, afternoons melting under spa treatments, evenings laughing by fire pits with other women who'd all weathered their own storms. I blossomed in the salty air, growing lighter, tougher, surer every day that choosing myself wasn't betrayal. It was survival. Back home, Jake's world was shrinking with every unanswered call. He tried once, twice, 8 times, his voicemails piling up like spam, each one sharper, angrier. I saw his name flash on my phone once and slid it to block contact without a second thought. No yelling, no tears, just calm. But some folks don't fade quietly. 2 days later, an email from my lawyer, Ms. Larson, pinged in my inbox. Notice of intended legal action. Sarah's name sat at the bottom, dripping with spite. The message was a sloppy mix of threats and demands, claiming I was unstable, that I'd been tricked into locking accounts, that Jake and Sarah deserved access for my own sake. I shut the email without a flinch, poured another glass of rose, and let the ocean breeze tangle in my hair like a warm hug. They could shout into the wind all they wanted, I was done listening. Tomorrow, Clara was taking me to a hidden cove where the water was so clear you could see your shadow smiling up at you. I was ready to swim out, far as I could, and let the last bits of guilt dissolve in the waves. Words can cut deeper than steel, especially when they're dressed up in legal jargon. Jake and Sarah thought I'd buckle under their pressure. They forgot. Paper cuts sting too, and I'd spent a lifetime learning to bleed quietly and keep going. Now, I wasn't bleeding at all. I was drawing lines they'd never dare step over. The sun blazed over the resort when my phone hummed on the balcony table. Not a call, not another frantic voicemail. An email. Subject: cease and desist confirmation. Filed successfully. I sipped my guava juice, a small smile tugging at my lips at the clean weight of those words. Ms. Larson had been ruthless. The letter sent to Jake and Sarah spelled it out in icy, precise terms. No harassment, no sneaky financial grabs, no spreading lies about guardianship or neglect. Break the rules? Straight to court. I hadn't raised my voice, I'd raised the game. Meanwhile, back in their crumbling world, Jake tore open the letter with trembling hands. Sarah leaned over his shoulder, her face turning a furious shade of crimson. "She can't be serious," Sarah spat. "She's threatening us?" Jake crushed the paper, slamming it onto the kitchen counter. "This is on you," he snarled. "You pushed too far." Sarah's eyes narrowed to slits. She started it, thinking she could ditch us after all we did for her. Neither dared say the truth, humming between them. They hadn't done a damn thing for me. They'd only taken. And now the tab was due. I was already a world away in every sense. That afternoon, in the resort's airy marble lobby, I signed the papers for my second condo. A sunny little place in a quiet coastal village abroad. Part investment, part sanctuary. Freedom came with a price and I'd paid it in full. I tucked the documents into my sleek new travel folder, its edges crisp, untouched by grasping hands. Sipping a latte under a swaying palm, a memory drifted up. I walked into the courtroom in a charcoal blazer, a string of delicate pearls at my throat, wearing the same steady look I had at my husband's funeral, calm, composed, with a quiet strength that threw people off balance. Ever seen someone face a storm and not blink? That was me. Jake and Sarah sat across the room, huddled with a jittery young lawyer who was shuffling through a stack of neon-tabbed folders like his life depended on it. Sarah was draped in head-to-toe black, playing the part, her eyeliner already smudged for maximum pity points. Jake wouldn't look at me. Not yet. The judge, a sharp woman in her late 50s with gray-flecked hair and zero patience for theatrics, adjusted her glasses and glanced at the docket. Case 1276, Thompson vs. Harper, she announced. Claims of elder neglect, financial incompetence, and undue influence. Plaintiffs, go ahead. Jake's lawyer stood, his voice wobbling as he stumbled through a speech about family rifts, generational misunderstandings, and a fragile woman supposedly duped by shady outsiders. I didn't twitch. I sat there quiet like a spark waiting to catch. When my turn came, Ms. Larson, my lawyer, rose with the cool confidence of someone who'd done this 100 times. She slid a single folder onto the bench. Your Honor, she said, her voice smooth as glass, we don't need stories or theatrics. We have evidence. She set out 3 tidy binders, one for the judge, one for Jake's team, and one she opened with a crisp snap. Exhibit A. Text messages from Mr. Jake Thompson, soliciting funds under false pretenses. She flipped the page. Exhibit B. Bank records showing thousands funneled from Ms. Harper's accounts for their rent, car loans, and luxury purchases, none with long-term consent. Another turn. Exhibit C. A voicemail dated 3 months ago where Mr. Thompson says, quote, she's slipping. Once we take over, we're golden. The room froze. The judge raised an eyebrow. Sarah's face went white. Jake squirmed like the air had turned toxic. I sat, hands folded, my silence a blade cutting through their lies, louder than any argument they could muster. The judge finally spoke. Plaintiffs, care to respond? Jake shot to his feet. Your Honor, my mom's always needed someone to look out for her. She doesn't get it. We were just trying to protect me. I cut in, my eyes locking on his for the first time. My voice was soft but solid like steel wrapped in velvet. I raised my son alone after my husband passed. I bankrolled his first 4 startups. I cleared his credit card debt, his house payments, his entire wedding. I put my own dreams on hold so he'd never go without. I paused, letting the words land. But I never once gave him permission to treat me like a bank with a heartbeat. A few murmurs rippled through the courtroom. The judge leaned back, taking it in like a punch. I may be older, I went on, but I'm not lost. I didn't forget who I am. They did. The ruling came fast and sharp. All claims tossed out, Jake and Sarah fined for a baseless lawsuit. The court declared me, Ellen Harper, fully competent, legally, mentally, financially. Sarah's jaw dropped. Jake sank into his chair, face burning. I stood, gave the judge a single nod, and walked out, my shoulders square, my step steady on the polished floor, like I'd finally shed a lifetime's worth of chains. Outside, a reporter was waiting. Miss Harper, is it true your son abandoned you at an airport? I paused just long enough to slip on my sunglasses. No, ma'am, I said coolly. That's not where he left me. That's where I left him. By morning, the story was everywhere. Mom stranded at airport wins court battle against son's financial exploitation. Comments poured in, angry, supportive, inspired. Some shared their own tales. Others just typed, way to go, lady. Parent who finally stood up. I skimmed the headline once, then set the tablet beside my morning coffee, watching the waves crash through my condo's open window. I didn't need the cheers. I had my freedom and it sounded like the sea. They thought they were coasting on my money, but they were banking on my silence. When I stopped staying quiet, their whole world fell apart. You don't feel a house collapsing all at once. It leaks, groans, then crashes. The tow truck didn't roll up with fanfare. It glided down the street like it was just another Tuesday. Jake stood on the porch, arms crossed, jaw tight, as the driver stepped out, eyes averted. The guy moved like he'd done this 1,000 times, like Jake was just a line on a clipboard. "You can't take it," Jake snapped, stepping forward. The driver handed him a form, still not looking up. "Miss 4 payments. Bank's call." Nothing personal. But it was personal. Everything was now. That same afternoon, a foreclosure notice slapped onto the front door. Neon orange and stuck so tight it peeled paint when Jake tore it free. Sarah saw it first, her face hardening to stone. "I told you she wouldn't let this slide," she hissed, stalking the living room like a trapped cat. "You couldn't even talk her into settling?" Jake dragged his hands through his hair, already thinning from months of stress. "She's blocked me out. Calls, emails, even the apology I sent." Sarah's laugh was sharp like broken glass. "Too late for sorry." 3 days later she was gone. Bags packed, makeup case and high heels in tow. Their fake perfect life crumbling with her. Her last words slipped through a slammed door. "I married you for a future, Jake. Now you can't even keep the heat on." While their world burned, mine was blooming. At my beach condo, the morning was wrapped in a silence that felt like peace, not payback. I stood on my balcony, sipping bold espresso from a hand-glazed mug, the air tangy with salt and lime. My skin glowed with the sun's touch, untouched by courtrooms or confrontations. I scrolled through my inbox, swiping away junk mail and ads, until one subject line stopped me cold. The email subject line read, "Residency permit approval. Granted." A slow, sure smile spread across my face.
No urri, no pleagem, no strings.
Just a stamp ticket to stay or go, my call, my terms. Can you feel that kind of freedom, the kind that settles deep in your bones? That evening I met Clara and Ms. Larson, my lawyer who'd become a friend, at a cozy little tapas spot nestled by the waterfront. We raised glasses to choices made late but true, laughing as the sea breeze wove through our words. Between bites of shrimp and stories, Ms. Larson slid a pamphlet across the table. "From the Department of Aging," she said. "They're kicking off financial literacy classes for seniors next month. Your name came up." I blinked at the title. "Reclaim Your Ledger. Empowering Women to Protect Their Wealth." My finger traced the bold print. "Me? Why?" Ms. Larson grinned. "Because most folks wait for someone to hand them permission. You rewrote the playbook." I folded the pamphlet and slipped it into my bag. "I'll sleep on it," I said, but a spark was already flickering in my chest. The thought of teaching other women how to snip those invisible tethers, how to shield themselves quietly, how to stop saying yes when it cost them everything. Back in the States, Jake sat alone in a dim living room, scrolling through articles he used to laugh off. Stories about financial abuse, consequences, and how fast the world drops you when you've burned through everyone you used. Each click was like a lock snapping shut. Each unanswered voicemail a cold reminder. I wasn't coming back. They tried to steal my money, my voice, myself, but I had something they couldn't touch. Wisdom forged in betrayal, scars that had turned to strength. I wasn't just guarding my legacy anymore. I was building it, one woman at a time. The room wasn't fancy, just a sunny corner in a small library in a coastal town where visitors came for the cliffs and stayed for the peace. But to me, those folding chairs packed with gray-haired women felt more alive than any courtroom, more vital than any resort deck. I stood behind a simple podium, my voice clear as I read from my notes. "Your name belongs on your own accounts. Your signature seals your freedom. And your story, it's yours, not for the people who wrote you out of theirs." The room went quiet, then stirred, soft whispers, nodding heads. One woman murmured, "Finally." It started with a single phone call. A friend of Clara's at the Department of Aging had seen the court story and reached out. They didn't want me for sympathy. They wanted me because I'd done what so many women felt they couldn't. I said no. I stopped apologizing for surviving. Now every Tuesday, I led the Freedom and Finance Circle for women over 60, widows, moms, caregivers who'd spent lifetimes putting others first. I didn't preach, I shared. I told them about cashing out my savings for Jake's startup because he swore it was his big break, about skipping new shoes for years to cover his emergencies, about how guilt carved me hollower than loss ever did. And then I told them how I stopped. The first session ended with clapping that echoed off the walls. One woman cried and pulled me into a hug. Another whispered, "I thought it was just me." I looked at them, not as someone who'd been hurt, but as a flame lighting the way. Each woman left with a booklet: how to read a trust, how to cancel a power of attorney, how to say no when the world makes you feel selfish for trying. I didn't just want to protect myself anymore. I wanted to arm others. That night, I sat on my balcony, the breeze tugging at my cropped silver hair. A cup of chamomile tea sat cooling in my hands untouched. I pulled out my legal folder, its edges worn from weeks of updates. Inside was my revised will, with a new clause added that day: 75% of my estate to a network of women's shelters and legal aid for seniors. Ms. Larson had asked, "Nothing for your son?" I'd answered, "I already gave him more than I could spare." I signed the draft with a smooth, sure stroke. No fanfare, no second-guessing. The pen moved like it had been waiting decades. Flashback to me at 46, hunched in my kitchen at midnight, stretching a grocery budget because Jake borrowed again. Me at 50, outside a car lot, clutching a cosign loan form while the dealer asked, "You sure?" Me at 60, watching my birthday candles drip wax because no one came. Each moment had chipped away at me. But now, every signature, every workshop, every woman I lifted up was a piece of me reborn. The next morning, I checked my mail out of habit. Among the usual resort flyers and utility bills was a plain envelope, no return address. I opened it carefully, the paper stiff in my fingers. Inside, a single line in messy handwriting: "I need you, Mom." Signed, Jake. No demands, no excuses, just 6 raw words heavy with years. I read it once, then again, then folded it neatly. No tears, no reply. I tucked it into my journal, next to a clipped article: "Local woman turns betrayal into empowerment." The envelope didn't beg or threaten. It was just a quiet cry on cheap paper. But it wasn't a son reaching out. It was a man dodging the fallout of who he'd become. I'd stopped mopping up other people's spills. The letter sat on my kitchen counter for 3 days. I passed it each morning, the waves through my open window louder than any pullet tried to spark. I brewed my tea. I ran my workshops. I laughed with Clara over grilled fish and rose. But on the 4th night, as the sky burned a deep violet and my hands felt steady with certainty, I sliced it open again. The handwriting was shakier than I remembered, scribbled in a hurry, like it was written in a panic. "Mom, I'm in deep trouble. Not just money, legal stuff." I didn't see it going this far. I never meant to. My eyes blurred for a second over the words. "There's a fraud investigation. They're talking jail. I don't know what to do." The letter's words echoed in my mind. "I need you, Mom. I'm in trouble. Legal. Fraud. Jail. No, I'm sorry. No, I love you." Just raw panic scrawled in ink. My jaw tightened. There was a time I'd have pawned my wedding band to pull Jake out of the fire. But that time was gone, buried under court papers and broken trust. Some bridges don't just burn, they're ash. I folded the letter, smoothed it flat, and tucked it into a manila envelope. On a sticky note, I wrote one line: "Evidence of potential fraud, received unsolicited." No name, no feelings, just the truth, aimed where it belonged. I sealed it, addressed it to the Financial Crimes Division, and slipped it into the mail slot before dawn. No fuss, no guilt, no looking back. 2 weeks rolled by in a soft, steady rhythm. Workshops, beach walks, gulls calling, Clara's laughter. The letter faded, tucked somewhere between memory and peace. Then one evening, as I scrubbed dishes to a mellow jazz playlist, Clara burst in breathless. "Flip on the TV," she gasped. I dried my hands, grabbed the remote, and switched it on. Local news. A banner crawled across the screen. "Son of court case winner arrested in multi-state fraud probe." And there was Jake's face. A mugshot, eyes dull, face slack, broken. I didn't blink or gasp. I stood there, sponge dripping into the sink. The anchor's voice droned on. "Jake Thompson, 39, was detained today after a year-long probe into check fraud and misuse of restricted joint accounts." Clara's hand settled lightly on my shoulder. "You okay, Ellen?" I nodded once. "Yeah. And I meant it." Flashback to the day Jake was born, so tiny in his hospital blanket, when I whispered, "I'll keep you safe forever." But some fights aren't yours to take on, especially when your child becomes the threat. That night, I wrote in my journal, I read his letter. Then I closed the book. Come morning, I brewed a bold coffee, stepped onto my balcony, and let the ocean breeze tug at my robe. I wasn't smiling, but I wasn't grieving either. It was a new kind of calm, the kind you earn when you stop saving people who won't save themselves. I clicked off the TV. The screen went dark, but my story? It was just getting started. The news fades, but the future doesn't. I turned from the screen, stepping into a life where my name was mine alone. The waves didn't care what I'd carried. They rolled in steady, washing away guilt, regret, and a lifetime of apologies I never got. I let them go. The sun was barely up when I walked onto the beach barefoot, the sand cool and wet under my toes. I hadn't slept much, but I didn't need to. For the first time in years, my mind wasn't racing to fix someone else's mess. No lists, no urgent voicemails, no dread of sudden demands. Today was mine, my 71st birthday, and the only guest I invited was the sea. The wind played with my cotton skirt as I walked, slow and sure, each step grounding me. Families pitched umbrellas, runners jogged past, kids chased waves, but no one noticed me. I didn't need them to. In my hand, I held a small, smooth stone warm from my grip. Etched on it was one word, freedom. A gift from Clara, given with a hug and a quiet, it's time. I reached the water's edge as a big wave swept in, brushing my ankles, the salt sharp against a tiny scratch. The sting felt clear. This is where it ends, I whispered. And where I start. No big show. Just a flick of my wrist and I tossed the stone. It arced once, twice, then sank into the sea. I didn't wait for the ripple. I closed my eyes, let the breeze wrap around me and smiled. Flashback to me at 33, cradling baby Jake, promising a future I'd sacrifice for his. Me at 52, signing over my nest egg for his fourth failed venture. Me at 61, eating birthday cake alone while Sarah posted yacht photos. Those women felt like shadows from someone else's story. The woman on this beach wasn't desperate or owed. She was free. Back at my condo, sunlight spilled through the balcony doors like honey over warm wood. A vase of lilies sat on the counter, my gift to myself. I brewed an espresso, humming as the machine gurgled, and spotted a thin envelope on the floor by the door. I hadn't seen it before. I picked it up, turning it over, no stamp, no return address. Inside, a letter on crisp resort letterhead. Ms. Harper, we're thrilled to offer you a permanent residency suite at Sapphire Cove Retreat, designed for independent guests seeking peace and beauty. Your loyalty and community impact make you an ideal fit. Should you accept, this is your invitation to call this paradise home. No hard sell, no pressure, just an open path. I sat at the kitchen table, steam curling from my cup, the letter neat beside it. The ocean sparkled outside. Some chase retirement like it's the end game. I'd learned better. It wasn't the finish, it was the start. My story, my rewrite, was just getting started. I folded the residency letter and set it beside my passport, whispering to myself, let's see what forever feels like. Can you imagine a moment where you claim your life, no apologies needed? The day Jake ditched me at the airport, he thought it was a hiccup, a mix-up I'd brush off. But I knew better. That gate slammed shut for good, not waiting for sorry. It was waiting for me to rise. The residency contract lay before me on thick cream paper. The ink bold and crisp, like every choice that brought me here. A gentle breeze slipped through the balcony doors, stirring the gauzy curtains and carrying the scent of salt and jasmine. I held the pen, paused, then signed my name, Ellen Harper. Each letter slow, steady, defiant in its quiet power. My signature used to mean giving in, signing away pieces of myself for others. Now, it was my vow, I choose me. Once the ink dried, I stepped into the living room, where my old leather suitcase, zipper still busted from years of neglect, leaned against the wall. Next to it, on a small table, sat a framed photo Clara had helped me snap a few weeks back. It was me outside the airport arrivals terminal where Jake left me. Hair tossed by the wind, suitcase in hand, eyes blazing with something fierce and unshakable. I'd written the caption myself. The day I chose myself. I placed it by the door of my new condo, a beacon for every version of me that walked in or out. The days before my move were calm, not empty. I gave my furniture to a shelter for older women starting over. I slipped handwritten notes to the baristas at the corner cafe and the librarians at the community center, each one saying, "Thanks for seeing me as just Ellen, not a headline." On my last night, I sat by the ocean watching kids splash in the surf, their giggles ringing like bells across the waves. I didn't think about Jake. Not his voice, not his mugshot, not his desperate letter. That pain was buried, and this time I didn't carry the shovel. Flashback to me at 26, cradling baby Jake on a thrift store couch, promising, "I'll give you the world." Me at 45, paying his rent while my own bills piled up. Me at 61, standing alone at an airport curb, the wind biting as silence sank in. Now at 71, I was stepping barefoot into tomorrow with a signed contract, an open passport, and only what I chose to hold. Earlier that day, I'd closed my last US bank account. The teller, all polite smiles, asked, "Reason for closing?" I didn't flinch. Because I'm done bankrolling people who never saw me. No anger, just truth. I didn't know rage anymore, just peace. I paused before boarding the ferry to the island where my new home waited. My purse buzzed softly. I glanced at my phone. Jake. Again. Blocked. Again. I didn't even read the message. If my life were a movie, the voiceover would kick in here. Love without respect is a cage, and I loved too long without being seen. But now? I answered to no one. He left me stranded. I left him empty in every way that counts. I stepped onto the ferry, the sun warming my back, my suitcase rattling behind me. I didn't look back. The breeze caught my scarf, lifting it like a banner. Not of defeat, but of triumph. And then, I sailed across the water, not as someone abandoned, but as someone who'd finally left. If you like this story, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel. What do you think? Did Ellen do the right thing, or should she have done something different? Write in the comments. We also recommend you to listen to the story of a strong woman, Lydia, who was ignored by her son for 27 years until she became rich. Then he invited her to Christmas, but she had her own plan. To watch this story, just click on the left window on the screen. Enjoy the movie.